I'm going to walk you through how to bill a secondary insurance in Cairo HD from start to finish. If a patient has two insurance plans, there's a specific order of operations you need to follow. So skip a step and you'll run into claim rejection or a balance that won't settle correctly. We're going to cover the whole thing, making sure the secondary is set up on a patient's case, creating the secondary claim, and post the secondary payment once it comes back. Before you can do anything with a secondary claim, two things need to be true. First, the patient's secondary coverage needs to be added to their case and marked as secondary. To check this, you want to go into the patient's profile and open up their cases. Click on Insurance/Coverage. You'll see a table listed with all their coverage. Under the priority column, you'll see primary and secondary. That's what tells Cairo HD which policy is primary and which is secondary. If the secondary insurance isn't listed here, click on Add New Insurance Coverage. Then enter the plan information. Under priority, make sure to select secondary. The second thing is that the primary claim needs to have been created in Cairo HD, sent to the clearinghouse, and had its EOB posted in Cairo HD, whether that be manually or via ERA. All those steps have to happen before you can create the secondary claim. This is the most common mistake we see in support tickets. If you skip posting the primary EOB first, the secondary claim won't have the payment and adjustment information it needs. It'll either reject at the clearinghouse or fail to bill entirely. To send out our primary claim, we're going to go to Insurance, Create Claim, and under Responsible Payer, you'll select Primary. Then you're going to create the claim and send it to your clearinghouse. This Send to Clearinghouse button works with our integrated clearinghouse partners, and that is Office Ally, TriZetto, and Availity. To post the primary EOB, you're going to go to Insurance. And if you are using ERA files, you'll navigate the ERA on this Insurance Home dashboard. To manually enter the EOB, I'm going to click on Process EOB. This section matters a lot, so I want to spend a minute on it before we go to the secondary claim. When you post a primary EOB, Cairo HD reads those adjustment values, what the primary paid, what the contractual write-off was, any copay, coinsurance, and deductible, and uses them to populate the secondary claim file information. If those fields are empty or wrong, the secondary claim will be missing the information it needs. If you're posting from an ERA, Cairo HD pre-fills those fields for you from the electronic remittance file. You will still need to review them, but the data comes in automatically. If you're manually posting an EOB, meaning you're typing in the payment yourself without an ERA file, those adjustment fields are blank by default. You'll have to fill them manually, line by line. Directly from the EOB, you'll need to fill out the payment information, any deductible, copay, coinsurance, and then you also want to go over here to this Adjustments field. And here you can notate any adjustments that were entered on the EOB. Don't skip these fields or leave them at 0 if the EOB shows amounts. Every one of those values gets written into the secondary claim. If the primary EOB shows a $40 contractual adjustment and you don't enter it, the secondary payer sees a claim where the math doesn't add up. Once all the line items have been entered, you can finalize the primary EOB. We have other video all about how to navigate the Process EOB screen. One thing I want to point out is, when you are navigating through the patients, you can see here a snapshot of their coverage. This patient has only primary insurance coverage. This patient has a primary and a secondary. This is very important when posting an EOB from the primary. The reason being, let's say the primary paid $5 on this service. I do not want to write off the remaining balance if I'm posting from the primary EOB. I need to leave a balance so that there is a value for the secondary EOB to post against. If you write off that balance, the patient disappears from the Process EOB screen for the secondary. If that happens, you have to go to the patient's ledger on the date of service and edit that line to create an insurance balance again. This will create a lot of extra steps in the workflow versus just keeping in mind when I'm posting a primary EOB. Do not write off any until I am posting my final EOB from the secondary. At that point, if anything is remaining, you can write it off then because there's no other payment to post against the value. To create the secondary claim, you're going to go to the Insurance tab, Create Claim, and then on the left panel under Responsible Party, select Secondary. If I do not see the patient that I am looking for to create a secondary claim, you might want to make sure the date range includes the date of service. And again, remember that a primary claim has to be created and a primary EOB has to be posted. Now click Create Claim. There can be two different workflows depending on who the primary payer is, whether it is or is not Medicare. If the primary is not Medicare, for example, Blue Cross Blue Shield is primary and United Healthcare is secondary, you can create a secondary claim and send it to the clearinghouse just like you did with the primary. If the primary is Medicare, they typically auto-forward a claim to the secondary payer. In that case, you create the secondary claim in Cairo HD, but you do not send it to the clearinghouse. The secondary claim in Cairo HD is just a record that you need, so you can post the secondary EOB. So, in this situation, if Medicare is primary, when sending the secondary claim, I do not need to hit Send to Clearinghouse and I can just navigate away from the screen. Again, keep in mind, if it doesn't auto-forward, then you do need to send the secondary claim out. To post a secondary EOB, I'm going to click on Insurance. And again, if it's an ERA file, it will flow into this Insurance home screen. Or if I'm manually entering it, I can click Process EOB, enter the third-party payer. All the other necessary information on the EOB postings, which again, we have videos dedicated to that. I would enter in the check amount, and then I can see here under type. This is predicting what type is up to pay on this line item. I have not posted that primary did anything on these services, so it's still saying primary. You can change this if necessary. Also, on this line item, as we showed before, the primary insurance paid $5 on this service. So I can see here under previously paid the $5. Previously paid will show if there was multiple EOBs posted. Let's say in this situation, the secondary payer is paying $2 on this service. And on that secondary EOB, they're saying the patient does not have any responsibility, so I do not need to fill out these fields. At this point, I can write off the remaining balance because there's no other payers to speak against this service. So I can hit W on my hotkeys and write off the remaining. Then at this point, whenever I've finished, finalize. To navigate to the patient's ledger, I'm going to click on Transaction History. If I click on the Insurance History tab, I can see here the primary payer and the secondary payer, the dates they were paid, and I can see primary paid $5 and secondary paid $2. If for whatever reason I need to rebuild these services, if I click Set to Rebill and hit Save, it will set the service to rebill for both primary and secondary. So keep that in mind. If I hit Set to Rebuild, it will rebuild for both, so you will have to go through the process for primary and secondary again. That's the full secondary billing workflow in Cairo HD. To recap, confirm the secondary coverage is set up and marked correctly on the patient's case. Create the primary claim, then post the primary EOB with all adjustment details filled in. If it's a manual EOB, you to enter those values yourself, line by line. Then create the secondary claim with the responsible payer set to secondary, sent to clearinghouse if needed, and then post the secondary EOB when it comes in.